morning. I think we're live. We're ready to go. My name is Todd Gimbel, and I am not here because of me. I'm here because of this wonderful panel. And I think I'd just like to start out by saying we heard three really good tone-setting presentations this morning between Lori and Senator Pangilinan and Jason. We heard about the scenario that we're dealing with here. And some people might hear all that and say, well, okay, let's just fold up the tent and go home. This is too hard, and we're not gonna be able to solve all these problems, because I didn't count, but I stopped counting at about 40 different things that were raised this morning that are problems that are gonna be extremely hard to solve, and that's 40 out of probably thousands that exist. Good news is that we have some really smart people from government, from the public, from NGOs, and from the private sector who know about these problems and who in their way are studying, working on, and looking at attempts to solve the problems. And this panel is a really good cross-section of those types of people. I'm gonna introduce each person and let them speak for a couple of minutes on who they are and what they're doing. And then after that, we'll have a little bit of a discussion, and then we'll open it up for questions. So I don't wanna waste time talking too much, so let's dive right in. First up this morning, we have Peter Erik Evenmaier. Now, if you look in the program, his last name isn't in there. We were talking this morning about how his country, the Netherlands, came in third place in the World Cup, but he doesn't think he's yet able to be a one-name person like Neymar, so we wanted to make sure that his last name gets into the program and into your minds. But it wouldn't surprise me if Peter Erik is a soccer player as well, because he is kind of a Renaissance man. He's with the Sustainable Agriculture Initiative in Brussels. He's got a background in chemistry, in the fine arts, and in sustainability. And he's done some wonderful things, including he was one of the folks who developed the original life cycle assessment. So without further ado, let me introduce Peter Erik. Should.
Yeah? Will it work?
You're good to go.
Okay, good morning. Thank you for the introduction. I'm not a soccer player at all. Can you hear me? No. Can you hear me? No?
First panel, we're going to have a few technical problems. We'll try to get out of the way.
Does it work now? Does it work? Okay, thank you. First of all, I'm not a soccer player. Indeed, my sons are actually, and they watched the game, obviously, also last night. So congratulations to Germany. We would have loved to play against Germany, but unfortunately, Argentina was better than we are. Very pleased to be here. We are just trying, as I say. I represent the Sustainable Agriculture Initiative, which is a platform of the global food industry that is concerned about all the things you heard this morning. And it's really a challenge. And if you listen to the speakers we heard this morning, you may become tired or think, well, where to start? And actually, the platform is a place to start. Some visionary people 12 years ago, from amongst others, Unilever, Nestle, and Danone, came together to say, actually, this is too big a problem for just our small company in itself. So we need to find solutions together. And I think the biggest solution to the problem is trying to find ways to collaborate. How can we really find each other, and how can we change the system which we're all in, which prevents us from collaboration? We have lawyers at the table when we do this pre-competitive collaboration that really scrutinize what we can say and what we can share. So I'm very curious to hear about the Salmon Initiative Jason just talked about, where they apparently have maybe not so many issues about that, but we are very cautious about that, because the games of the rules of the game of competition sometimes are very challenging. I think what we have done over the last 10 years in this platform is really talking and creating consensus about what is sustainable agriculture really about. and it's about all the issues you heard this morning. And I think we, by now, do agree on that. And that's an enormous achievement, because before that, you saw a lot of initiatives, and you still see a lot of initiatives popping up about what are the definitions of sustainable agriculture really, and what are the solutions to that. I think we all agree on 80 to 90% of the issues, and also on 80 to 90% of the solutions. I think the biggest thing that I want to emphasize in this morning session is that we try to also agree that those standards have this commonality, and the big challenge is now to work on it. So what the Sustainable Agriculture Initiative has done over the last 2-3 years is put together what all those individual companies have in their sustainable agriculture codes, as Unilever calls them, but many of our members have indeed ambitious and targets for sustainable agriculture in the near future. 2020 particularly is one of the focus years for my members. And they increasingly agree on the content of that, but not totally. So we lose a lot of time and effort and capacity in doing a lot of benchmarking between what a particular company wants to happen in the market and what standards offer. I do plea, and we work a lot on pulling together those standards and saying, actually, this is the 90% we agree on, and there may be 10% that are the niche markets that have different requirements. The Sustainable Agriculture Initiative has, by that, created what we call a farm sustainability assessment, which is supposedly to be three focus area thing. One, replacing the standards of all our members. So it will be the new standards of what those companies require. Secondly, it's an on-farm assessment tool, which can be used for small and big farms. It's not a one-size-fits-all, but quite near to that, and it needs local adaptation. And thirdly, it's a benchmark tool in order to create a more easy understanding, connectivity between what farmers offer, what different standards offer, and what most of those companies start to work on and require. And I think that type of consensus building and that type of agreeing on what we really mean by sustainable agriculture is essential in our discussion.
Thank you. Next up is Matthew Morell, to my left. He's the Deputy Director General for Research of the International Rice Research Institute. Matthew recently moved to the Philippines from Australia, where he spent the bulk of his career. He's now immersed in rice and is a chemist by trade, but he has expertise in biotech and genetics, public-private partnerships, as well as stakeholder engagement, all three of which are very important for the problems we face. And as you heard the Secretary mention this morning, Philippines has to import more rice than they'd like to have to import. So we have a guy like Matthew now who can talk to us about rice.
Okay, thank you. So coming to work in the rice sector from Australia, where I mainly worked in the wheat area. Can you hear me okay okay, it's coming in now. So dealing with climate change in that context is nothing different in that we have already faced over the last decade very significant changes in terms of the impact of the El Nino cycles on wheat production, and of course that is a very major concern for the rice sector. I want to make the point though that I think that we should be very careful to frame our discussion not in terms of some absolute choices about which crops or technologies to focus on, because rice is an incredibly important global supplier of calories. It's about 600 million tonnes produced. Projections out to 2035, we need to produce about another 120 million tonnes. And I think the point has been made very well that we need to do that without being able to expand the acreage, with the ability to deal with the fact that we're going to have scarcer inputs water, more expensive or scarcer inputs such as fertiliser. We're also dealing with the impacts of urbanisation, so that we have significant changes in labour availability and the costs of labour in a production system which has been traditionally very labour intensive. So the points that the Secretary made earlier about the attractiveness of a heavily labour-driven crop production system are ones that we have to deal with over the next 20 or 30 years, and they're impacting right now. So moving away from hand transplanting, moving to more mechanised production systems are going to be important. From an IRRI perspective, we consider that genetics still has a very strong role to play. So we are blessed with working with some absolutely fantastic genetic sources. We have a wonderful gene bank with 120-odd thousand types of rice from around the world. There is undoubtedly huge potential in that material to unlock to help us with this challenge. Second challenge is to improve the production system so they have less impact. So we have strong programs around reducing water use and seeing concomitant decreases in greenhouse gas emission, etc. So trying to go for win-wins. And finally, understanding the economic system and the impact that the technologies have on the lives of the farmers, as was pointed out earlier, and in terms of also issues like gender equity. So these are important areas to combine, not to work on as silos, but to see them as a package of solutions. And as a final point, that these play out rather differently across the globe. So while we're headquartered here in the Philippines, we work across 17 countries where we have active programs, because the deployment of these technologies and these solutions is going to be quite region and within countries, even sub-regional specific solutions need to be deployed.
Great, thank you. Next up, from the private sector, Guy Hoge. Guy has just arrived from Geneva this morning. He is the head of sustainability at Louis Dreyfus Commodities, one of the largest commodity companies in the world. And we were talking a little before we took the stage here, and Guy's got a great background because he spent most of his career in the business, really working on the front lines of the business, and more recently he's moved into the sustainability side. I personally think it's valuable to have business folks now working in this area to bring their business expertise and marry it up with sustainability and the issues we're talking about today. So without further ado, Guy.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Is this on? Yeah. So delighted to be here in Manila, first of all. As an England fan, it was good to get our anxiety and pain finished very early so we could get on with watching some proper football. As mentioned, very pleased to be here in what is an extremely important forum. I've tried to pick as an introduction the three sort of main topics and challenges that we were asked to address. A lot has been said already, but starting with climate change, as a number of speakers have already highlighted, getting more from less is really a priority. That really involves a lot of collaboration, a lot of dissemination of the right sort of information. Incredibly challenging where you're talking about value chains that involve millions of small farmers. Genetics, genetic modification is also something that needs to be on the table, as Jason mentioned. Often a very contentious topic in many parts of the world, but if we are to meet the growth in food provision for that growing population whose dietary habits are changing, then certainly a debate on genetics is key. From a food security perspective, from our perspective as a processing and trading company, efficiency of value chains is integral to resolution there. So investment in things like transparency of markets and the access to markets for small farmers in many parts of the world where that is denied is key. Very rural producers as well may not have the access that they should. That requires significant investment from companies like mine, from governments as well, in elements of the logistics chain to make access to markets much more efficient and productive. I would say government intervention in terms of food security is key. I think as Jason mentioned in his talk in agriculture, we see huge amounts of government intervention, often obviously with the best intent, but export or import taxes or export bans, import bans can affect value chains significantly and obviously have quite a dramatic impact on price. Also consumption issues and the issue of waste, the issue of obesity are things that need to be debated and are part of the solution. In terms of rural development, again, often governments have quite complex ways in which they address land distribution and ownership. We've talked a bit about, or we've heard a bit about an urbanizing population, how often the next generation of farmers are not keen to conduct the same work that they've watched their parents and grandparents do. Mechanization, access to capital, perhaps more efficient, enhanced buying mechanisms for groups of producers, groups of farmers would aid the efficiency process. And again, often governmental-led extension services, best practice sharing is key. The final point I would make at this stage is and you'll hear a lot about the various commodity roundtables over the next couple of days. But for a company like ours, participating in those sorts of forums that are multi-stakeholder, that develop standards, are perhaps key in our eyes to the sustainability journey from a commodity-specific basis. So looking forward to hearing what is said there. Thank you.
Thanks, Guy. Next up is Juan Farinati. He is probably sleep deprived. As an Argentinian, I guarantee you he was up at 4 a.m. And while he may be unhappy, he still should be happy because Argentina gave it a valiant effort, and it's better to be in the final than not to be in the final. So Juan is with Monsanto, recently moved to Asia Pacific from Latin America. He brings a wealth of information of the Monsanto business and what has been done in Latin America now here in Asia. So it will be interesting to see what Juan has to say. So why don't you give us an intro, Juan?
Okay. Good morning to you all. My voice is a bit difficult after the match last night, but it's not that we won't cry for Argentina. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the invitation. Basically, what we believe in Monsanto, and we believe that in Monsanto we need, or what we believe is to focus in innovation and in partnerships, to make sure that all the value chain, the farmers, and the different stakeholders we have in the ag value chain really can produce more with less, and at the same time can produce more with less without impacting this planet we call home. That's fundamental, and in our countries, in this region, we have a huge challenge to make this region be able to be sustainable and to be self-sufficient going forward through yields and through conserving our land and our resources we have in the different countries. What we are doing, and basically what we are doing is to work with our sustainable ag commitment with different partners and different growers around the world, trying to make sure that first we meet the demands of a growth population around the world. Second, we do it in a conservative way, in a sustainable way. And third, we impact the grower. We improve the lives of growers that are the ones that need to be in the center of this effort to make it happen. The challenges are the ones that has been described. Clearly, we need to produce more food. Clearly, we don't have, and we won't have more resources. We will have less resources to do it. And clearly, poverty at farmers level is a huge challenge. Today, 1 every 7 people around the world are hungry, and 60% of those are growers. That's why it's fundamental that we are able to focus in the grower, and through the grower, through the farmers, achieve what we want to achieve from a food security perspective. They need to produce more food, they need to produce more fiber, and they need to do it in a more sustainable way. And to do that, we need to connect what we say that are the 4 Ps. The first is prosperity of growers and of the ag value chain. That needs to be the focus. The second one is product and technologies, second P. Third one is practices, how we can make growers be more effective producing. And the fourth is partnerships. We need to do it together as different stakeholders in the ag value chain focus in helping the grower. And these 4 Ps, we need to link them correctly. We need to reach the prosperity of the growers, give them technology, give them knowledge, help them and be with them, making the things happen, and also help them to be able to channel that production through the different markets with different tools. Let me give you 2 examples about how we can use products, practices, and partnerships. In the case of innovation in products, here in the Philippines, corn, 20% increased yield during the last 10 years since biotech was introduced. That 20% yield increase means that Philippines was and became an exporter in 2012 of corn. Amazing accomplishment. Second, another example, talking about partnerships and practices. Vietnam, growers in the Mekong Delta. I had the chance to be there, going in the Mekong Delta in a canoe through a corn crop in a canoe. Amazing. Growers moving from rice to corn, $400 per hectare more for the growers. That is impacting in 1 year, changing 1 crop. There are multiple examples. The other day I was in Australia. Amazing how the growers are using irrigation to plant their cotton and be really impressive growers from the production perspective. So there are examples around practices, around products, and around partnerships. But partnerships are fundamental to make it happen. What we need to do in the long term to really be successful, and being successful in this of being successful in innovations and in partnerships. We need 3 main things, and this is our perspective as a technology company. First, we need to have a clear vision and strategic vision around research and development. Research and development in technologies and research and development in practices to make growers and to let growers have the choice to use different technologies and different practices in their fields. That's the first piece. The second piece, fundamental, to have a predictable and science-based regulatory framework to be able to launch new technologies and give choices to the growers. And the third piece is to have a framework to protect intellectual property to the different investments that are done to bring new technology to the farmers. Those are the three things that we feel that are pillars of the success of putting together an environment that helps to bring innovation and partnerships. Regulatory framework, intellectual property framework, and a clear vision around research and development. And something that is clear that in our case, I represent a technology company, but there are a lot of them. Something that is fundamental for us is that we can't do it alone. As companies in technology, as farmers, as different stakeholders in the ag sector. We need to do it together. Each of us, we are going to be able to put a small grain of sand, but we need to do it together, and that's fundamental. We, as a technology company, we're focused in listen, in dialoguing, in having the chance to exchange and understand what the growers needs, and to help the growers to be successful, having in mind that they need to be in the middle or in the center of the focus to be able to really reach the food security we're expecting in a sustainable way. And the final message, and I think that all the different panelists and the different speakers talk about that. Clearly, it's simple. We need to produce more. We need to produce more with less in a smart way, and we need to focus in the farmer. If the farmer is not successful, if the farmer continues being 60% of the people under poverty of the world, we won't be achieving our goal. Thank you.
Thanks, Juan. Last but certainly not least, because I'm going in the order of the program, is Regina Batista Martin. She's the administrator of the Philippine Sugar Regulatory Administration, a very important group, and I know from personal experience over the years, having worked with them. And Regina is a sugarcane farmer herself from Negros. She also was a civic leader, and she's the first woman to hold this really important role, which is very admirable because it's probably been much of a man's world in sugar farming, but she's risen to the top of the ranks, and she's here with us today to talk about the unique perspective she has in her role. Regina.
Good morning. I had to write it down too because I also stayed up for the morning to watch the game. The Philippine sugarcane industry, as I was listening to the 3 Ps, I said, okay, I fit in. I'm administrator under the Department of Agriculture, specifically for sugar. Now sugarcane. Philippine sugarcane industry will be the game changer in the future of our country. Our industry diversification program is on track. And with the entry of big business players, mainly from ethanol investments, power, and so interested in other green products, biowater, bioplastic. That's the initial that is coming in. We're proud to be a green commodity. We are and will continue to be self-sufficient in sugar, including fulfillment of our U.S. commitments. By year end, we shall have 50% capacity of our mandated requirement for ethanol to blend with our gasoline. And by 2016, we shall have contributed about 20 megawatt of electric power to the grid using our bagasse. In addition, we shall have other sugarcane-related products used in many aspects of Filipino lives. I would just like to mention that we have 420,000 hectares of planted to sugarcane. Compare just to Thailand, just to have a base of benchmarking. Thailand, as I was mentioning to the chairman, that they're very grateful. They had learned how to grow sugarcane from the Philippines a few decades back. But however, now they have at least 1.1 million hectares planted to sugarcane, and we're still into 420,000 hectares. Their population is 80 million, more or less, and we are 100 million. Their consumption of sugar Thailand is 2.5 million, whereas our consumption is 2.2 million metric tons. That's consumption and production. Our production is 2.45, hitting 2.5 million metric tons of sugar, whereas Thailand is producing at least 11 million metric tons. So that's how far off we have been, but we are moving forward. While we are on track, we still have a lot of work. We must increase our farm productivity, we must improve our mill efficiency, we must reduce our costs of production, we must increase our area planted to sugarcane, and we must increase the number of our large farms to achieve economies of scale in our sugarcane plantation. These will be our continuing challenges. Our roadmap for the sugarcane industry spelled out what we have to do. We would like to increase our contribution to the Philippine economy from 76 billion to 100 billion pesos. We must hurdle the challenges of the ASEAN economic integration. Specifically, we must be able to compete with the imported sugar that will have only a 5% tariff come January of next year. Our analysis strongly suggests that we must produce our raw sugar at less than 1,000 pesos per bag. Because imported sugar at lower world market prices, current dollar exchange rate, we will have landed costs of no more than 20%. Toward this end, our programs include productivity, improvement, industry diversification, establishing a responsive regulatory framework, development of infrastructure support, active market research, and enactment of a Sugarcane Development Act. All of these will be done within the framework of a sustainable development. The tasks we have are still enormous, but I know that we shall triumph. We're the most organized commodity industry in the country, from the farmers to the millers to the traders. Some of them are here. We have traders and millers. And we have institutions working in various aspects of the industry, from research and development to socio-economic programs for our constitution. We have a very active public-private partnership. Being in government, our private sector has very active support in the industry to make it grow. These enviable characteristics will ensure not only the continuation of the sugarcane industry, but more importantly, the transformation into a vibrant and diversified Philippine sugarcane industry. In closing, I'd just like to take note of what everybody was mentioning about the farmers being the focus. If there's anything that we have been venturing into and have already have a modest success factor is, I'm not sure if all of you are familiar, another branch of government has distributed land because of the Agrarian Reform Program, and because of this, sugarcane being a plantation crop has made the land size small, making our production less efficient. Because of that, about 95 or even more are small land holdings. What we have ventured and have been quite successful is consolidating this land, regardless of ownership, but we have consolidated at, we made them block farms, managed and linked up to the mill or to farmers' institutions, and managed plantation size again. And for the past 3 years have been back on track, become more successful with the proper policies that government has provided. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Now, I'm going to start it off with a few questions and discussion, and then we'll open it up to the group. When I was preparing for today, I did some research, and I was not shocked about the issue because I know a little bit about the issue, and I think everybody, whether they're an expert or just a layman, is familiar with the issue of climate change and food security. Whether they know it by name or not, they're familiar with the issue. What I was most blown away by was the number of initiatives that exist. At the ASEAN level alone, I think I counted 5 or 6. That doesn't count country-level initiatives, region-level, European, American, everywhere else. My question to the group is, there are so many different groups focusing on these issues. How do we connect the dots, as we say in this? How do we start looking towards bringing everyone together towards solutions instead of just putting groups together to talk about the problems? I know that's an unanswerable question, but if anyone can take a shot at it, some of these folks. Why don't we start way down at the end here with Peter Erik?
Yeah? Are you working now? Yeah. I think it's an essential question. I think our platform in itself is an example of pre-competitive collaboration where you see big companies sitting together and increasingly grown from the 3 original 12 years ago to more than 60 at the moment. That's an example, but also between our organization and many other organizations, you see increasingly collaboration. And one example is the guide we produced together with 7 other organizations on sustainable sourcing. And it was an initiative, an idea of one of our board members initially, and we started talking about it. And within 1 month, we found out that 7 other organizations were working on the same kind of development. And we pooled resources together, and we decided to create one guide with 20 odd examples of parts of the sustainable sourcing supply chain. Increasingly, we see this happening, and the conviction of organizations that only by collaboration and trying to agree on what we agree upon and pulling that together is essential, and not focus on where we differ from each other.
I'll ask a follow-up question to one of the company folks here. How do you decide which groups to get involved in? What is the process you go through? Why don't we start? Go ahead, Guy.
I think the essence is, as you rightly say, there are innumerable organizations that are essentially looking to address very similar issues. I think for us the key is really the credibility of the organization, not just from our perspective, but in terms of the product or the markets that they're looking to address. In our experience, the commodity-specific roundtables, which are very much multi-stakeholder in nature, that's a very important point, have been the key drivers for us to make sure that we participate in those. Some have had more success than others, it must be said, so they're not all perfect by any means. But I think to avoid the criticism of being either sector specific or partisan in some way, the multi-stakeholder element is crucial, and so the commodity roundtables have been very strong in that regard. So
Juan, maybe I'll throw it to you, but add, if we're looking at the commodity roundtables as a good place to start, how do we marry up and get best practices moving between the different commodities?
I think first that's something that is very important. Going to the previous question.
Please.
What is the ability to execute plans? I think that is clear. We all have clear which are the problems, and we all have a group of solutions that are intending to address those problems. I think that something that is critical is how we can partner together, private sectors, farmers, different organizations, public sector, to be able to really execute based on those plans. Because as I said before, the people that is hungry all the days. So we need to gain traction and make things happen. Make things happen. And thinking about the topic of how we can exchange best practice between commodities, my feeling is that if we have the correct stakeholders in those organizations getting together and connected and understanding the problem, understanding the solutions, is something that will evolve and will reach what we are intended to reach. We need to have the key stakeholders, the clear stakeholders sitting in those tables and forums.
I think on that point there is actually a mechanism where the heads of the various round tables do get together to compare notes. on the basis that there's no need to reinvent the wheel. You know, the standards that they all develop tend to be very similar in terms of principles that are addressed. So it's a case of applying that to the specific challenges that exist within a particular commodity, but that happens already now.
Well, and I'll now throw it to Regina and Matthew. You are each in one commodity silo. What do you do in your roles to learn about and share information with folks who work in other commodities? I'll start with you. I know it's a tough one.
Sugarcane is very. It may seem to be only focused on one commodity, but however, there is more to sugarcane than sugar alone. As I've mentioned, we have produced bioethanol, power, and so many other products. But focusing on the poverty and even in our country, what we have done is we have created a very aggressive and active public-private partnership by organizing a Mill District Development Council. Where there is a mill, we have the Farmers Association with the mill, and also the local government units, and the private research institute within each sugar mill. And with the Department of Agriculture, since I belong also to the Department of Agriculture, we involve the farmers in engaging market-driven products that can easily be a diversification for the farmers, because sugarcane being a one-year crop, they need food security, they still subsistence. And so they diversify a portion of that area, planted into, for example, rice, corn, and livestock, all of that, but market-driven now, because there is a private company that has invested within that area, wherein they continue to become simply a farmer and not think of the market. There is already, how do you call it? When contract growing, so it's market-driven. That is what we do. Government facilitates this market within the community to improve the bottom line. Is the income of the farmer has to increase. So you have the cash crop and the food security that will also increase their income. That's
great. Thank you. Thank you.
I think there are a number of touch points with working with the other agricultural systems. So firstly, I mean, the revolution in genetics is based on fundamental principles that apply across crops. So working and ensuring that we're very connected into that is an important part of what we do. Secondly, a lot of the growth potential in cereal production is in areas where there are not just rice systems, but rice, wheat, rice, maize, rice, legume rotations, which are important from a production perspective, but also from a diet diversification, income enhancement perspective. So they're important touch points. Another one is around building capacity. A very important part of enhancing overall resilience of the system is to be very involved in training and raising the strength of national systems, extension offices. Many of those issues go across commodities. And finally, in the policy area, of course, there are commodity broad, wide issues rather than commodity-specific issues. So I think at all of those levels, being able to have the right networks and contacts and collaboration is very important.
Thanks. I know we started a little late, but hopefully we have time for a couple of questions from the field. 2 questions. I'm getting the signal. Does anyone have a question? Please.
Matthew, my question is for you. When you're considering the touch points to step outside your commodity, and you consider the conjunction between rice and livestock?
Yeah, so I think to broaden out animal protein in general, rice and fish as well, not just livestock. I think there are a number of opportunities there around making much better use of from a rice perspective, rice straw, rice hulls, for example, working with our colleagues in aquaculture in terms of the use of saline waters, etc., varieties which are more adapted. So I think we definitely have to further invest. I mean, we have in the past had work in that area, but it's an area to revisit, particularly where we have major issues disposing of rice straw, for example, in a number of areas, which causes environmental issues, yet we see the land hunger of a beef production system. So there are a number of ways we can have some win-wins there, I think.
I think we had one more over on this side.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to ask question to Mr. Guy and Juan. You see that there are a lot of certifications right now in the market. So how do you see the rule of the certification, different certification in the efficiency of market that you said, Guy? Juan, you see, you mentioned about the partnership. What do you think the best and workable model to work with the farmers? Because if we are talking about the standard, they see that this is kind of another non-tariff barriers to the farmers to access the market. So how do you think about this? One question to Mr. Matthew, ICR. One important thing for the farmers is the seed, you know. But the phenomenon right now is that there are privatization of the seed. It makes farmers diminishing their capability to access the affordable seed. So what do you think about this phenomenon? How we work on this? Thank you very much.
Start with you guys first, I guess.
So thinking about the partnerships, our view, and maybe I'm going to be bringing an example. Our view that the kind of partnership we need to have is where we have from the public sector a clear vision about what they want to accomplish. First, second, from the private sector, having companies that are providing technology and providing information and practices, and also private companies that are able to provide ways to market that production that the growers are going to be producing in their fields. As an example, in Vietnam, there is a partnership between companies, private companies, companies that are working with channeling the production, and together with the government, together with the public sector and the government, in this case the Minister of Agriculture, to start driving increased yields in corn, not only in the northern part of the country, but in the southern part of the country. And it's something that is gaining traction this year. Among 5,000 growers in the southern part of Vietnam start planting new crops, corn in this case, with great results. That's why it's fundamental to have private sectors, technology, and the commercialization piece, farmers, and the public sector.
Yeah, thank you. In terms of certification schemes, I think it's a very poignant and good question. There are, again, innumerable possibilities out there. I think for a lazy company like ours, if there's one certification scheme that covers everything, that would be the ideal. The reality is that, unfortunately, that's not the case. It is increasingly so, though, in some particular commodity streams where the marketplace has accepted one particular scheme as the scheme for people to target. So that works well for us. If you look at a commodity like coffee, for example, the situation is made quite complex by the fact that a lot of our customers, the people that we sell to, will champion one particular scheme. The next client will champion a different one. So if we want to sell to that variety of customers, we're obliged to get coffee certified through a number of different schemes. So that is at one extreme. I'd say if you look at something like sugar, where one standard seems to have been accepted by all as the standard, that makes life a bit simpler. If you look at another value chain like cotton, where there is a round table for cotton as well, they have been very collaborative with a number of other schemes to include them so that if you're certified under one scheme, it counts towards the other one. So again, that sort of collaboration makes a lot of sense for us. But I would say in terms of your specific question, the certification schemes that we pursue are to a large extent dictated by market requirement. So if there is one that fits all in that particular commodity stream, that would be the ideal for us, but reality is often a bit different.
Peter, I think it's a very relevant question. I think my mic is not working. Schemes and standards and certifications have served a lot of particular crops and particular issues where it is maybe the social issues and poverty and child labor on one hand, or the more environmental issues on the other hand. But increasingly you see a kind of confusion in the market, not only with the consumer but also with the professionals on how to choose. So I want to refer to, again, the Farmer Self-Assessment initiative that we took at SI Platform, which is covering almost a one-size-fits-all, as you asked for. So our members standing behind one type of requirement, a set of questions. And secondly, we have a collaboration with the ITC, the International Trade Center, and set up, together with their standards map, potential to benchmark more than 100 schemes with this key farmer self-assessment list of questions. So as a farmer starts from this set of questions, and it can be easily accessed online, he can or she can compare with every standard in the world where he stands and decides to go for a standard or not. So there is an increased potential to make individual benchmarks to standards.
Thank you. Just briefly to his second question, and then we'll wrap up.
I think one of the key issues across the rice sector is farmers having access to high quality seed to enable the inbuilt advantages of new genetics to be captured. So that's a really first compelling question that we work on around capacity of systems to produce such seed. I think the question of the nature of the genetics that's embedded in that seed, it's clearly for the farmer to have the choice to make an informed decision that's in their best interests around how they want to go there. So part of the solution there may be some private-public partnerships. It may be the private sector acting alone. I'm sure the national systems will continue to have a very strong role.
Thanks. Well, let me just wrap up briefly. I think we had a great panel here. The question was, could we connect the dots on climate change, food security, and rural development? Obviously, in less than an hour, there are too many dots to connect. But I think what we did show here is that there's commitment from governments, there's commitment from NGOs, there's commitment from the private sector with not only money, but time and expertise. And folks like these from these various organizations are smart and committed. And the fact that you are all here and we're talking about this should help us lead to action as opposed to just words. So thank you for listening and joining us with this panel. And thanks to the panelists.
Thank you, Todd.